I had the idea that I wanted to write a prequel. So I would set it before A Game of Thrones started, and I wanted to write it about a tournament. I'm George R.R. Martin. Some of you may know from my books and television shows and other things. And we're coming to you from Milk of the Poppy, which is the bar that I've opened here. It's a pretty fun bar. If you come to Santa Fe, come and have a drink. Any place is a good place to talk about stories. I love talking about stories. But bars are a good place to talk about anything. I don't believe in getting drunk while I write, and I don't find it adds anything. So if I drink anything while I'm writing, it's a soft drink or iced tea, which is like the national drink of the Southwest here where you are. Oddly enough, when I travel, which I do more, when I was a kid I didn't travel at all. I was from New Jersey, we just stayed there. Maybe that's why I write the kind of books I write, to take you to other planets and distant ages past and other worlds. Because it was my desire to see more of the world than the 5 blocks that I lived in when I was a kid living in the projects. One thing that the field of science fiction and fantasy has is anthologies, which are collections of unrelated short stories. I've edited anthologies, the New Voices series, the Wildcards, and I've sold stories that appeared. My early work, mostly short stories, a lot appeared in anthologies. I got contacted by Robert Silverberg, who is one of the grandmasters of science fiction, and he'd edited anthologies for years. New Dimensions, that was very prestigious. He edited the Science Fiction Hall of Fame. And he had an idea for a new anthology, which he called Legends. And Legends would consist of 10 of the biggest fantasy writers in the field, major names. So Silverberg contacted me and said, hey, we'd like one of your fantasy stories. I agreed to do a story for him, and the parameters of Silverberg's book, Legends, was it had to be original, never before published, and it had to take place in the world that you had, whichever world it happened to be. So for me, that was Westeros. But I wasn't finished the series. I was still, I believe, working on the second book at that time. I had the idea that I wanted to write a prequel. So I would set it before A Game of Thrones started. And I wanted to write it about a tournament. I've always loved knights and chivalry and all of that stuff, and the jousting thing. And I'd had a tournament in some of the early books, but just sort of in passing. And no, I'll set this entire one around a tournament. One thing or another, Dunk and Egg came from somewhere. I had to figure out who starred in this. Well, the Game of Thrones people weren't born yet, so at least for me, there are stories that write themselves almost. They come alive, and you think of them every day, and you dream about them at night. I mean, this story and the characters Dunk and Egg really came alive on me. The earliest stories I wrote were for comic book fanzines, which are amateur, and it was a thriving fandom growing up around comics, and particularly Marvel comics. So I wrote little amateur stories for that, not involving the DC or Marvel heroes. Those belong to other people, but I created my own characters, Garazan the Mechanical Warrior, and Manta Ray, and the White Raider, and all of these things, which were pretty popular. And I think the fact that the other comic fans, who admittedly were mostly high school or junior high school kids like me, liked them and said good things, that I look back and I think, that was probably a huge change in my life, because they liked them, and the fanzine editors would want more, et cetera, et cetera. And I did when I went to journalism school at Northwestern in Chicago. And when I got out, of course, I applied to many newspapers and magazines for an entry-level job, but I also applied to Marvel Comics. They did not hire me, sad to see. As I get older, and I am a little older now than I was then, I do find myself looking back at my life and seeing the things that could have gone differently. What if I had turned left instead of right? What if I had taken this newspaper job in Arizona or something like that? What if What if Marvel had hired me? How would my life had come out?